All right, good evening, everyone. Tonight is a special meeting of the Finance Committee. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it's necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the committee during the meeting. To ensure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the committee state their name and address. Members of the audience may be asked to limit their questions and comments. The committee chair may ask the individual to yield to the next speaker. All right, so I'll call the meeting to order. Who are we missing? Mrs. Ramich is not here, Mrs. G is not here, and is that it? All right, that's it. All right, so 7 present. Let's move on to the minutes. Actually, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's move on to the approval of the minutes for the November 26, 2018 Finance Committee meeting and the February 4th, 2019 special Finance Committee meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Thank you. We'll move on to public comment. Anybody in the audience this evening that would like to address the committee, please step forward, state your name and address. All right, seeing none, we'll move on from public comment. And let's begin with our informational items. Which one would you like to take first?
The Meritorious Budget Award presentation, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diazio. Tonight we have 2 distinguished guests with us. We have Mr. Jay Himes, the Executive Director of PASBO, that's the Pennsylvania Association of School Business Officials, and the Executive Director-elect, right? Dr. Wayne McCullough from PASBO as well. They're here to present the school district's award for the ASBO, the Association of School Business Officials International, the Meritorious Budget Award. And Donna McGrawer is going to receive that recognition on behalf of North Penn School District. So, Jay and Wayne.
Just so everyone's aware, Mrs. Ramich has joined us on the phone, I'm told.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I know you have a lot of important business to do, so a lot of important decisions will be very brief. I just want to take a couple of seconds, though. And first of all, I want you to just work with me here for 1 minute. Imagine you're in the grocery store. Imagine you're taking a walk with the dog down the street. Imagine you're at a sporting event here at the district, and remember when the last time somebody ran up to you, patted you on the back and said, "You are doing a great job on behalf of North Penn School District." And if that happened in the last few weeks, consider yourself lucky, because most of the time the answer is not for a while, if at all. So one of my purposes here today is to give that pat on the back to people who have done great work. So this is the Meritorious Budget Award from ASBO International, Association of School Business Officials International. It's a significant award. Let me just very quickly tell you some of the criteria and some of the outcomes. And I guess the outcomes are most important, because what this award does is assure not the district per se, but really your community, your taxpayers, your business, your staff, even your students, that one, you work in a high degree of transparency in terms of your budget. It helps you build confidence among all those constituencies because of the rigor that's established with the Meritorious Budget Award. And finally, it's a commitment. This is not a 5-minute undertaking or a couple hours one day in the office. It is an absolute commitment, resulting in something probably looking like a phone book or perhaps your own budget document on steroids, if you will. It takes a commitment to do this, but the outcome is you've established all those things in your community, and it's recognized. There are only 4 states in the country, Illinois, Virginia, and Texas, that have more meritorious budget awards than Pennsylvania does. And it's not a large number. We only have 11 in the entire Commonwealth because, again, It requires rigor, and it requires a commitment to do this. But you know, your community, your businesses, your taxpayers, your students and your staff are better off for that award to be recognized here in North Penn. And so we're going to re-establish this award with Donna, where's Donna? And Steve, and say congratulations to you. It's very significant, come on. We'll have to get the requisite picture because I can't leave without a tweet for Steve Scrocky. That just wouldn't be right. Just wouldn't be right.
Jay, when you get in the picture of that?
Sure. Can I just, can we spin you guys this way?
Yeah, we can all go this
Spin
way.
this way?
All go this way.
Then you'd be on TV and get a picture. There we go.
While they're taking the pictures, just to let you know, this is the 4th year in a row that North Penn has been the recipient of the Meritorious Budget Award. And this year, Donna McGrower spent countless hours working on this particular project. Donna was serving in the capacity as the Interim Assistant Director of Business Administration while she completed this project. And Donna knows that there was a tremendous amount of work that went into the project, right, Donna? 129-page document, and Donna did the lion's share of that work. So it's a tremendous accomplishment for Donna.
And while we're here, there's one more additional recognition we'd like to share with you, with the Board of Education. Thank you for your distinguished service as well, and with the community. PASBO has a certification program. Our program is a Pennsylvania Certified School Business Administrator. We have less than 20% of the school business officials in Pennsylvania have reached this level of certification. And North Penn not only has one, but now has 2 school business officials that have met this, again, distinguished recognition. And it is a program that is full of rigor, which has an educational component as well as a continuing professional development component to it as well. So I'm proud to recognize Kristen Johnson and Steve Scrocky, who have achieved this distinguished recognition as a Pennsylvania Certified School Business Administrator. So congratulations for that as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay and Wayne. Appreciate you coming. See you at the conference. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Steve and Kristen, congratulations on that. Also, while we're recognizing Donna for your service, Donna, I want to thank you on behalf of the Finance Committee for stepping in while the department was in transition. Steve and I communicate fairly frequently on finance matters, and he always let it be known how much extra time you were working and putting in to make sure that everything stayed on track. And I really appreciate it, and I know the whole board really appreciates it. So thank you.
Well done.
Thank you, Donna. All right. Let's move on to our department level budget presentations. Who would like to go first?
Okay, I think we have 3 presentations tonight. This is for the 2019-20 department budget presentations, and I think we have Christine Lebrowski and Bob Gilmer up first for school and community engagement and district communications.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Nice to be here today that we're not home from school. It's great. Really wanted to be here presenting to you, and thank you for allowing us to be here and once again talking to you about what we do in the Office of School and Community Engagements and Communications Media. As you can see, we have a small but mighty budget there at about $1.4 million. We've stayed pretty consistent through the years, and we've kind of outlined some of the things that we do. And I will say that, well, first of all, it's salaries and benefits, printing and postage, different activities within the school district, such as the district retirement celebration, all of the printing and design, all the technical services that go with communications, and also our advertising program. So when we talk about communications, a lot of it you can't put a price on it because it's really the professionalism in what we do. What you don't see included here, because it's in the technology department's budget, is our website. and our emergency school messaging, so school messenger and so forth. So that's not in here. I say we're small, but we're mighty. Consistently, our department does receive awards both from the state organization and the national organization for our ongoing efforts. And I will let Bob talk about the second column.
Yeah, basically, if you don't already know, obviously we do television, right? So we have our television services as well as the AV support in the school district. So our department supports all of the AV equipment in each of the classrooms. The projectors, large displays, our sound systems across all of our schools, as well as the rigging systems, inspections of all of our stages. Our pieces of our budget really break down between TV and AV. TV is just that, it's television services, including support of our classroom, our television classes, and then the AV is repairs, sound system installations, projector installations, and those types of things. I'm still up. So this is what we're looking at for this year, going into next year. One of the things that we need to do with our displays in our classroom, and this continues to evolve a bit, is that we're all analog. So for those of you that know some computer things, the connections in the classrooms are all VGA, so they're all analog. So we're still in that 15-pin connector into the wall. We only have a couple of schools that are HDMI capable that can do the digital connections. Yeah, it seems strange, but that's where we're at. So what we're looking to do is we're beginning to transition our infrastructure of those projectors and displays in our classrooms to be digital capable, which also includes the ability that we're really transitioning, kind of leaping over the HDMI piece to being wireless. So we can just connect directly to the projector without having to worry about the cable in the wall. You see a lot of those types of pieces here. So that number there represents what we're doing across the schools next year. There's a multiple year phasing of this. You'll see a little bit later, we pulled a large chunk of that out for next year because we want to begin to deploy this. We're not in a spot where we can't use our equipment. We're not there yet, but in 3 to 4 years we probably will be. So we want to transition that in. So we're going to take our time going into it next year. Another big piece that we do are all the radios, the two-way radios in the school district, including transportation, security, all the handhelds you see in the school district. We manage those systems as well. One of the things we've come to find over, and it's interesting when people talk about radio coverage in our schools, we really don't know if there's a real problem with coverage until we start hearing that there's a problem. So we've put repeaters into 3 of our schools, 3 of our elementary schools right now, Montgomery, Nash, and North Wales are the 3 schools that have the repeaters, and all of our secondary schools have that, which basically means we're broadcasting locally at the building. All the other ones are radio-to-radio conversations and also picking off our district-wide repeater that we have one at transportation as well as over at Montgomery. So what we put into the budget next year is to do the remainder of those schools, 10 more schools to put the repeaters in there, just to deal with our coverage issues. We really find those when we deploy radios for special needs classrooms. And we may not know that we had an issue in a part of the building, and then all of a sudden in a classroom with student changes, we have a radio that has trouble communicating, and that's where we kind of found those pieces that we've been putting the repeaters in as those complaints have come up. But what this $45,000 number there is to finish the rest of our buildings so we don't have any problems in any of our buildings with any coverage. The last part here is continuing to replace sound systems and projectors in different large group instruction rooms, again being in charge of that. That's what that number represents. We've been doing different gymnasiums, auditoriums as we scroll through the years. So we work on this number a little bit. Sometimes we can bring that down a little bit. We could always take it down to 0 and then set up temporary speakers when we need them. But basically we've been phasing in trying to replace our sound systems of our legacy buildings. I think that's it for me. Let's talk about TV. So the last piece here is we decided to phase in our fiber optic cable replacement for television connections at the high school. We did a piece last year. We're doing a piece going into next year, and this will basically allow us to do the turf field coverage and the pool coverage, which we really haven't been able to do this year. We're installing this cable in mind, just like paging, that we're installing this high up in the ceiling and marking it so that when we get to a renovation piece that none of this is lost, that we can maintain all of this. Multi-year project, we've been working on this for 2 years now.
You have one more.
I have one more. This is what we defer. This is what I talked about here. So I pulled this part out of the budget. I put this in here. This represents some of our newer renovations are Culp, North Wales, and Nash, if you want to call them the newer renovations that we had, that had the infrastructure put in that was not digital at the time when we started that. We were looking at replacing all those systems wholesale. Again, we pulled that back, looking at we may not need to do that when we're looking at these wireless pieces. Okay.
So what are some of the things we do to try to save money and contain our costs? We are constantly looking at those services that we provide and how can we make them more efficient. One of the things that we're doing this year is we're moving our district retirement party into the school district. I've got great plans to make it a wonderful evening, save some money there, but also making it a really nice night that includes more of our students actually coming out to perform and to thank our staff members. Always have an ongoing review of our printed materials for cost savings, whether that means we're not printing them any longer and they're just online or in a digital format, or just looking at how it's printed and the paper, the size, and consolidating what we do. Always looking at community education and what can community education proceeds take care of for the school district. So something that we've been doing every year is taking care of the Knights of Honor costs. Looking at our staff, what can we do internally instead of going out and hiring people? So one of the examples we have here is the installation in the AV side of things. But we also do that just internally with graphic design and so forth, where we can do it ourselves. We also charge the community for our AV services when they're using our facilities and equipment. And the Educational Foundation, and through our EITC, our Educational Improvement Tax Credit Program, has actually paid for some of the things needed by the school district. The opposite, how can we bring money into the school district? You're aware of our North Penn Advantage program. Currently, we have about $12,000 that we've raised this year through that program. And then again, the Educational Foundation, which I serve as executive director of. This year, we funded more than $73,000 of innovative programming within our schools. We expect to do that again next year. We've raised actually over $160,000, which we can spend starting next year. Finally, what did we not put in the budget? One of the things that I've been looking at is the feasibility of a capital campaign within the community. Finding out that not only is there feasibility campaigns, but just foundationally, are we ready to kind of transition to that kind of model here in the school district? I believe that if we were to move towards something like that, possibly that's something the foundation could support and not the district budget. Something that we've already done is Bob had a pretty expensive camera in his budget for next year, and we're taking that out and we are paying with EITC funding. And also EITC funding we just don't use for television. We've got about 5 different programs that are approved within the school district. We support often the Engineering Academy at the high school, the planetarium, and other projects. So we can fund larger scale projects through this EITC money. And that's all we have. Do you have any questions for us?
Christine, what's the NP Advantage program?
That's the advertising. So the advertising that you see in our publications, the signs in the stadium, on our website.
We'll let the board know at the March action meeting, we'll have a gift to be accepted by the board at that meeting. It's a $10,000 gift from a local company that will fund partially TV studio at Penfield Middle Schools. Bob, I don't know if you want to make a couple comments about some of the equipment that we have on its way for that?
Yeah, we're basically going to be able to, we'll have a nice little broadcast studio there, the equipment that's funded through this gift, full studio, cameras, and we're really excited to get that installed and ready to go at Penfield. And while I have the floor, I forgot to say, I had stats of our YouTube channel and those types of things, and since I wrote it down and I'll forget it again, I just looked quickly before we came up. Since this time last year, we've had 1.6 million minutes watched on our YouTube channel of our content, and that's 407,000 views. So people are not just clicking on our videos, they're watching them. And that compares to last year, where we only had 1.1 million, only 1.1 million. And 398. So I'll throw it out there, take a guess on what was our #1 this year so far. And it's not me installing a lamp. It is on the channel. That's #2 video. But I was surprised at our Coatesville game that we went to Pennsbury. We had 300,000 views on that. Wow. 300,000 views on that video. So you're always surprised, and we were working really hard that night. We had a lot of trouble with power and trying to figure it out, so we had one camera and an announcer, and it was guerrilla TV that night. And that game where we don't have replay and graphics, and 300,000 views on that one. So very popular. Kevin Hines had another 100,000. So it's interesting what people tune in to watch us for. I haven't seen 100,000 on one of our board meetings yet, but you guys got to work on that. See what we're doing. I don't know. I want to show the stats. I had them written down.
All right, anybody have any other questions?
Quick question, for the cost containment strategies, have we started any conversations with perhaps North Monco? Because I think obviously the graphic design program, we have a lot of students that could really give back to the district.
We years ago looked into the printing there, and it wasn't as cost effective as we thought it would be. Actually, those types of projects, a lot of them we can do here. I am working with them for the retirement party, though. They will be catering, and I'm hoping they will be doing some floral designs as well. So yes.
Thanks.
Christine, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next presentation, we have Dr. Betty Santoro to cover the Elementary Education Department budget. Dr. Santoro, welcome.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Okay, so my budget is a little over $2 million, and the majority of my budget is really pertaining to salaries and benefits, so I thought I would just list out all the personnel that's in my budget. It's my position. It's our 2 home and school visitors that we have that service all of our schools. It's the district registrar. It's my assistant. It's our early learning coordinator that I know you're very familiar with. She's been helping us with our full day kindergarten. I also included in this year the additional art, music, PE, and library teachers with the onboarding of full day K. We'll need 1 teacher in each of those disciplines. We're projected that we will need 2 ELL teachers, so we have that sitting in my budget, but we have to see once we move through the summer months, when students start to come in, if that comes to fruition, that we need 2 full teachers. Also budgeted in my budget is substitute secretaries. They come and they help us with full day with the kindergarten registration. We've been running that, and we'll be running that for the next 5+ weeks. So we have to have other secretaries come in to support that. And then also in the summer, we need secretaries to come in and to support the registrar, because it's a very, very busy time in the summer months, as you know. Intervention is also included in this budget. Transportation and professional activities for music, and I'll get into a little bit about some of those. So intervention across all elementary schools, roughly $354,000 is budgeted for benefits and salaries, and that supports students in the area of reading supports with our RTII model, and also with some math intervention, so that pays for their salaries. Some of them work 4 hours a day, some of them work 5 hours a day, but once again, that's through all of our schools. We have some assistants that we onboard every year that have been with us for a while, and then if they move on and get other jobs, then we hire new folks to replace them. The music professional activities, you can see that some there, and that's for our vocal, band, and orchestra teachers, and that's to support them when they do their evening activities and they're having their rehearsals and their concerts, and anything that's over their normal contractual day. They get X amount of units a year, and that's where the money's come from this budget. Then in addition to that, they are encouraged to do like select groups, so you might have a select ensemble jazz group. You might have, in some schools, they have a select chorus group. So that varies by school, so that's where the funding comes for that. And then in addition to that, one of the things that I've streamlined through the years is that when we have folks come in to assist with the piano, whether it's for a concert, especially for the chorus concert, we were just, taking folks, volunteers, and we were just, maybe giving them a gift card, but we've streamlined that, and we're consistent across all of our 13 schools on what we pay folks for coming in for that. The transportation wages, a little bit over $32,000, and that's for all the in-district transportation that we do with students. Once again, if the Gwynnor and North Wales Band is having a rehearsal over at Gwynnor on a Thursday morning, we have to get the North Wales students back to North Wales, so that's that inter-district transportation. And it also includes the planetarium trips throughout the entire school year for all of our elementary schools. And then the remaining funds, that's just for some mileage to cover folks for, the home and school visitors, because they're out and about, they do a lot of traveling in the district. Supplies, which about $6,000 is for registration supplies to get all the folders and materials that we need, books and periodicals, and just a little bit of funding for professional development, especially to support schools with the PBIS model that are taking that on this year. I have some funds in there for that. Okay. And I think you do have a copy of my budget.
Yep, the detail, if you are in board docs, and if you open up the PDF document, at the bottom of the document includes all the line-by-line detail of the budget for each department as well.
How often do our elementary students visit the planetarium? Do they go, how many times?
Twice a year.
Each class?
Each
goes
grade
twice
level
per
goes
year?
twice a year.
Okay.
Yes. And that's a large part of where that money is going. Yes.
The transportation wages, is that going exclusively to in-house bus drivers, or is that also going to our?
That's just our bus drivers. That's just our bus drivers.
Back, I think it was your second slide, maybe. You talked about one full-day kindergarten teacher for your specials.
Yes.
How do you come up with one?
Well, because that's what we'll need. We already have the math all figured out, that we'll just need one additional teacher to cover, because remember that we have kindergarten right now has this special for 23 minutes. It's going to go to 45 minutes. So we've been working on that schedule since October. So with doing the math, we just need one additional. Yes. And that actually was worked out last spring when we first went in, when started to propose the budget.
I was wondering if we were doing a kindergarten center or something.
No.
Everybody wants to-
Oh, no. No.
Don't. Wait till I
Okay. Any other questions?
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Santoro. Next up, we have Dr. Bauer, who's going to cover the secondary education budget. Dr. Bauer, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Scrocky. Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Scrocky, Mrs. Johnson, and of course Donna, who left us this evening, for that prestigious award. It's wonderful to see great people recognized for their hard work, so thank you. I am fortunate enough. Steve, do you have my slide deck?
That's it. If you hit next, I'll go.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's it.
All right, so I have the honor of sharing with you the secondary education budget this evening, which I believe to be one of the simpler budgets. Because most of it is fixed expenses. It is $6.4 million, of which $4.1 million is our tech school. So if I go to this first slide here, those first four things, the tech school, North Penn Virtual Academy, our Title I supports, which is a federal program, and our Ready to Learn grant, that's 98% of the budget. And they are essentially fixed expenses. North Penn Virtual Academy, I'll get into a little bit. It's not fixed, but some of it is out of our control. So, first up is North Monco, which we speak about frequently in our meetings here in this room, and it's $4.1 million in contributions. It's calculated with essentially our fair share. So they take the total budget for the operation itself, our enrollment, and we pay our fair share. So it's estimated at $4.1 million. And in 18-19, we were 42% of enrollment. That seems to be a pretty steady trend. There are some ebbs and flows, but 42% is a nice average. The North Penn Virtual Academy, we work with our intermediate unit for our virtual programming. They charge roughly $880 per course, so that's a la carte. Or $5,000, $4,995 for a full-time student. That cost has not risen. Prior to me serving this capacity, there was a strong effort in North Penn to get students who are attending other cyber charters or other cyber school alternatives to come back to the North Penn School District and attend MVP through our IU. And you can see the cost difference there. So we spend about $5,000 a student for them to go to MVP, whereas if they go to Agora, 21st Century Charter, or some of the other more popular names, it could be as much as $13,000 or more. I actually saw a piece of legislation floated today that was advertised about trying to control that cost, and if you have a program in your district to requiring students to utilize that. So that would be a good thing for North Penn. Title I funding, like I said, this is a federal program that we apply for each year. There are two options. There are targeted assistance programs, which we were previously, and then there are school-wide plans. School-wide plans meaning the funding is allocated to the entire school, not to targeted students based on their economic need. And we use the bar of 40% free and reduced lunch to determine our school-wide schools. We have 6 elementary schools that fall under that. And they write a goal plan as to how they're going to utilize the funds. And this year, our schools are utilizing it to pay people to help with math and reading intervention. And then there are components of those grants where you have to engage your families and communicate with them, pay for things like translations in those communications. Next is our Ready to Learn grant, and I believe that details have yet to be ironed out, but Governor Wolf did say in his budget presentation that this would be part of our funding next year, so potentially, Mr. Scracky and I talked about this, potentially not being a grant, rather just part of our funding. So we're not sure what that's going to look like yet, but this year it was about $500,000, and we use it to pay for some of our instructional coaches, some math support in the middle schools, and then Mr. Grummeyer and our data analyst positions as well. So that's how we choose to use the Ready to Learn funds in North Penn. And then our summer school is, I believe, the next biggest expense of the 6.4. And last year it cost us roughly $64,000. We budgeted the same amount this year, but I would expect this cost to decrease simply because we're not writing the curriculum. Last year it was new, where we created our own curriculum, and we had a hybrid program, some days in person, some days online. So I would expect that cost to drop a bit. And then we did a middle school academy, which was project-based. I believe you guys all heard about that at an ECP meeting last year, which was wildly successful. I believe our students were all successful in the middle school summer school program. Most districts don't have a middle school summer school program, so I think it's wonderful that we do here at North Penn. And that is it. So of the 6.4, you can see almost 98% of it is fixed expenses. So. But that's how we spend those monies. At this time, I'd be happy to entertain any questions you have.
Regarding the change to that Ready to Learn grant, from a grant to regular funding, do we have any idea, or is it too early to tell if that's going to end up in a reduction in the money that we get?
No, the initial proposal by Governor Wolf is basically just including that same dollar amount in our basic education funding. So what it does when the state then reports how much additional money you're getting in basic ed, it's somewhat slanted because it's including money that was just in a separate line item in a previous year. But one of the things we're not sure of, what type of paperwork requirements or any kind of grant adherence will we need to do like we had to in the past, or is it just going to be included in our basic ed funding subsidy and be done with it? So those details to be ironed out, but right now what the government proposed would be the exact same amount as last year.
So hopefully just less paperwork, right?
Hopefully.
Exactly. We don't need to apply for it, but we can still utilize it in those ways. Anything else? Okay. Thank you. You got it.
Thank you, Dr. Bauer. Okay, moving on, we have one additional item under informational items for tonight. And that is just to let the board know, you might recall a few months ago, the board adopted a policy relative to professional services, setting a timeline for RFPs for certain services. And one of the items that was first up was for banking services. That was identified in the policy for that RFP to be conducted in 2019. So I wanted to let the committee know that that RFP has been posted. And we do have a schedule of activity coming up here in the next couple months with the potential of selecting a new financial institution for the school district. We conducted an RFP for banking services the last time, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. Any questions on that? Okay. Moving on then to items recommended for the work session or action meeting. First item would be the real estate tax assessment appeal policy. I've referenced this policy in a couple meetings in the past. Heretofore, the school district has not had a formal policy for district-initiated tax assessment appeals. So these would be situations where the district, through its consultants, feels that a property might be underassessed. And based on some recent court cases and so forth, the advice of our solicitor was to adopt a formal policy, and we have that draft before you tonight that was drafted by our solicitor. This policy basically establishes a threshold of assessed value of $600,000 or more, meaning that if the property is underassessed by less than $600,000, it's not the type of appeal that we would pursue. $600,000 at the current millage rate equates to roughly $15,000 in annual revenue for the school district at that $600,000 threshold, which is a target that we've been shooting for historically anyway. So that would be the minimum guideline to determine. We are looking at all properties. When we say all properties, it's not necessarily, I think there's 38,000 properties in the North Penn School District. 38,000 properties won't be identified every year, not each and every property. I think the all reference means all types of properties. So that's commercial properties, that's residential properties, that's industrial properties, that's vacant land. It's all property types will be examined. No one particular property type will be examined. All property types will be examined. One of the things that we will do, and we have easy access to, is take a look at the sales activities that occurs. We actually receive all the detailed sales activity information on a monthly basis from Montgomery County Recorder of Deeds. We share some of that information in our reporting through the transfer tax information report that we include every month in the Finance Committee. And that's something where it's pretty easy for us, if it's a true arm's length transaction, to determine if there's a disparity between the assessed value and the sales price. So that we have hard objective data, and we will continue to take a look at that. And those properties might be the first ones that are certainly ripe for an appeal because it's objective. The other category then would be properties examined by our real estate consultants. Keystone is our real estate consultant. We have a contract with Keystone, and they also identify parcels that might be subject to appeal. So this policy indicates that the district would recommend to the board no later than the June school board meeting, actually approving the list of properties for district-initiated appeals, and the annual deadline with the county is August 1st. And of course, prior to making a recommendation to the entire board in June, we would run that past the Finance Committee and provide a rationale for those properties, probably at the May Finance Committee meeting. So this is a first draft, similar to that professional services policy. Since the Finance Committee is the entire board, we felt it would be appropriate to bring it to the entire board through this committee as opposed to ECP. We'd ask for your permission to place this on the March action agenda for a first reading.
Ready to have, is there a motion?
Just a question.
Okay, motion second, comments, questions?
Yeah, just a question. So this policy, is it based on any other districts adopting this? How far ahead of the curve are we in relation to some of the legal findings?
Great question, Mr. Costa. I think you're seeing more and more districts now implementing a policy. So to my knowledge, in Montgomery County, there's at least 5 or 6 districts that have a similar policy, but you're seeing more and more adopt a policy in response to that court challenge in the Valley Forge case in Upper Marion Area School District.
Anybody else with any questions? All in favor of moving it forward to the next action meeting? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, that will move forward.
Thank you. Next item, this is a who's on first type situation. This is the propane school bus bid. So bear with me. I'm going to try to explain this the best I can. I do have a write-up here, but let me just try to briefly summarize what's going on with the propane school bus bid. So backing up a couple months, you recall that the school district received a grant, actually 10 separate individual grants from the PA Driving Forward program. This is the Volkswagen settlement that each state received a portion of money. And here in Pennsylvania, it was $118 million that was received by Pennsylvania. So we were fortunate enough, we applied for 10 individual grants. Within a week of the program opening up, we applied. In early January, we received information that we were awarded all 10, which was great news, for $459,000. So once we received that information, we quickly went out to bid for 10 buses because basically half of the cost of the bus was going to be funded by this grant. So bids came in, they were for 6 48 passenger wheelchair buses and 4 29 capacity microbuses. So not a problem on the 48 passenger buses. The board actually awarded that bid at the February meeting. The fly in the ointment here is the grant carries with it a 180-day timeline from the date of the grant award to the time you can actually receive the bus. So not a problem with the 48 passenger buses. They can be received within a 180-day timeline. Not the case, however, with the 29 capacity microbuses. So that presented a problem. We didn't want to turn away the grant money for 4 buses. So we contacted the grant administrator asking if we could receive an extension. The answer was no. No extensions are available in the program. So we asked the question, can we change the application for the 4? Instead of microbuses, can we purchase 78 passenger buses? Because we can receive them within 180 days if we do a new bid. The answer to that was yes. So we're going to do that. We're going to change the remaining 4 to a 78 passenger bus. And we have a bid out right now, and we're hopeful to have a recommendation for the 4 78 passenger buses at the March meeting, which means then that we can use that grant money to purchase the remaining 4 buses. So now what to do with the 29 passenger buses that are still hanging out there? Well, we did a bid, and we have a number. We have a low bidder. We're comfortable with that number. Those buses won't be able to be received until the new fiscal year. We do have money in the 1920 budget for 10 buses. So what we're saying is let's award, we're recommending the award of those other 4 buses out of the 1920 fiscal year. Unfortunately, that will not be funded by any grant money. Okay. Now, I mentioned at a previous meeting, our goal was to purchase 10 buses. As soon as we receive those 10 buses, apply for 10 more grants. You can only have 10 grants outstanding at one time. We thought it was a great plan that we could do 10 and 10 and 10. That great plan came pretty much to a screeching halt when we were communicating with the grant administrator about our situation with the 180-day requirement. The grant administrator informed us that out of the $118 million that was available, only $6 million is left. That's amazing because this program just opened up in December. So there's $6 million available that's going to be held until next year. So we'll certainly apply again, but we're not optimistic we'll be able to get another 10 buses. That's going to be very unlikely. So even though we do feel that the propane purchases is what we'd like to continue with in the future, at least on the PA Driving Forward program, it doesn't appear that any additional funds are going to be available. However, there is another grant that we will continue to apply for on an annual basis. In fact, we did receive grant money for our fueling station. This is called the AFIG grant, Alternative Fuel Incentive Grant. That's a separate program from the VW money. That one we'll continue to apply for on an annual basis. You can't receive the AFIG money and the VW money, though, in the same year. So we'll apply for that AFIG money again next year if we don't receive any VW money. So that's the long and short of it. So out of all the bidding and the grant, the long and short of it is our recommendation would be the following. We already awarded a bid for 6 buses. We're recommending awarding a bid for 4 29 capacity microbuses. That bid's already in. And then at the March meeting, we'll have another bid back for 4 78 passenger buses that will be funded by VW money. So all told, there'll be an additional 8 buses that we'll be recommending through a bid award.
All right, and we need to accept that at the next meeting?
At the March meeting, yes. What we'll do at the March meeting, then we will award the one bid that's already been open for the 29 passenger buses and then award the second bid that's currently being advertised for the 78 passenger buses. That'll be at the March action meeting. So we ask for your approval to move that formally, the bid award for a total of 8 buses to the March action meeting.
And Steve, if I follow you right, so we're going to be paying for 4 buses with next year's money.
Correct.
So next year, we're going to get 6 more buses.
Correct.
So in a 2-year time, we will still have 20 new buses.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yes. Unfortunately, not funded entirely funded by VW money, though, since that seems like the money is drying up pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, that's one.
Just for clarity, you said you have to apply for the VW, and then if we don't get that award, you'll apply for the other grant? You can't apply for them at the same time? Didn't we have them at the same time?
We actually did. We actually received that AFIG money, 2 parts of AFIG. We received money for the propane tank, the fueling station, and 4 buses. Once we received the VW money, though, we had to decline the bus portion of it through AFIG. The VW money was actually more lucrative. It was about 50% of the reimbursement. The AFIG money was about 25%. So we declined the AFIG money this first year in favor of the VW money, since the VW provided more money for the school district. So in the second year, if the VW money isn't available, then we'll apply for the AFIG money the second year. So we'll keep applying for grants as long as grant money is available. However, they won't be, the AFIG program is not as lucrative as the VW money.
Completely different subject, Mr. Scrocky. Well, on propane, still on propane now. What is the cost savings compared to what we're paying in diesel right now? So,
I don't have it off the top of my head, Mr. Casa. We did do an ROI on that. Savings not only in the fuel, but in the maintenance of the vehicle also. We actually did a 10-year ROI on that. I can certainly bring that to a future meeting. And it's pretty remarkable, the ROI on that, because when you factor in things like oil and maintenance time and the cost of the fuel itself, is pretty dramatic over a long period of time. That's not even counting to the carbon footprint on the environment. Financially, it was a pretty substantial cost benefit by going with the propane.
yeah,
Higher upfront costs, but total cost of ownership cost was less with the propane.
that's great. Thank you.
Did we have a motion to move these forward?
So moved.
Second. Any additional comments, questions, anybody?
I have one quick question. Is there any cost savings with the insurance of insuring the fleet with propane as opposed to a regular school bus, or is it?
No, that shouldn't be any different at all. Yeah.
Anybody else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right. Final item.
Okay. The last item we have is, last item is on a further discussion on our rebate program. This is the first year of existence of our rebate program, the 18-19 year. We've had prior discussion, I think most recently at the November Finance Committee meeting for the 19-20 fiscal year. And I have a full presentation that's in board docs, but similar to previous ones. I'm going to advance and take a look and pretty much go right to the punchline, if you will, and talk about some of the scenarios that we looked at last time. Because I think the way we left it at the November meeting was we were having a discussion about expanding the program. And the discussion centered around, do we expand the type of individual that resides in the school district? Meaning right now, for example, we only have the program eligible for property owners. Does that get expanded to renters? Because renters are also covered based on income level through the state program. The second question dealt with the fact of, do we want to consider an expansion of the 25%? Right now we piggyback on the state program, but it's 25% of the state amount. And the third piece that we discussed was eliminating the situation where the individual cannot receive reimbursement any higher than the North Penn property taxes. Eliminate that North Penn portion and just say the individual can't receive total reimbursement for more than their total property taxes. And that was discussed. We do have some developments in North Penn School District where the individuals simply own the mobile home and don't own the land, so the assessed value is pretty low and the North Penn taxes are pretty low. So we discussed that at the last meeting. So I have some updated data just to give you some ideas in terms of how many individuals receive a rebate at the state level, broken down by owners and renters, and then we'll take a look at a couple scenarios and the financial impact that would have on the school district. So North Penn School District, the most recent data, in fact, this just came out late in 2018 for the previous year. We had 1,543 individuals that received a rebate from the state. And that's broken out by the 4 income eligibility guidelines. So the largest number of individuals that received a rebate had an income level between $18,000 and $35,000. Total rebates in North Penn at the state level for owners was $514,000. Renters only have 2 brackets of income by which they are eligible for the state rebate. It limits the rebates at $15,000 in household income. Renters received $435,000 worth of rebates at the state level, 851 individuals. So the discussion we had, again, on those few factors dealt with, do we increase the rebate do we include renters? And what's the projected participation? So this year, for example, we had expected that 85% of the homeowners that were eligible would apply for the program. We realized that was probably a high number, but we wanted to be conservative and have more money in than possibly we needed. It was about $116,000 we have in this year's budget. And the way it's working out is we'll be lucky if we get 25% of those eligible to actually apply for the program. We're at 328 applicants right now, which is a great number, but it certainly falls short of the 85% projection. We've issued rebates totaling roughly $26,000 so far this year. So again, this year we budgeted $116,000. We've only spent $26,000. Okay, not bad for a first year. We're hoping the program will grow just by word of mouth and so forth, but we'll obviously come in well under budget for the rebate program for the current year. So we took a look at a couple different scenarios here. If we said, all right, if we're at 25% participation level this year, what if we're able to double that next year and get it to 50%? I think it's a pretty lofty goal, but I think it's something we can accomplish. Certainly, board members spreading the word that helped last year. I think we can do more of that. If board members do more of that, and through our communication channels and through our local legislators, hopefully we can increase that number to 50%. In terms of the budget, I have a couple scenarios on the board now, what that would actually do to the budget. So for example, if we receive 50% participation and keep the rebate at 25%, that's the first row, the total budget amount for next year would be $64,000. If the rebate was raised to 30%, the budget amount would be $77,000, and then if the rebate was increased to 50%, the total budget amount would be $128,000. Okay, that's just for owners. That's just if it was kept at owners. Renters, same scenario here. Now let's combine them. It seemed like the discussion that we had in November, it seemed at that time the majority of the committee was inclined to include renters in the coming year. So I have the dollar amounts combined here on this chart. Combine owners and renters. So again, assuming a 50% participation, if the rebate was kept at 25% of the state amount, the total budget amount for next year would be roughly $119,000. Basically right where it's at now, the budget amount. If the rebate was increased to 30% of the state amount, including renters, the budget amount would be $142,000. So we would need to add some additional funds to the budget for next year. Right now, for next year's budget, we have the same $116,000 in the budget. If the rebate match went to 50% and renters were included, the budget figure would be $237,000. So we would need to add roughly $120,000 in next year's budget if the board decided to go up to the 50% threshold. Okay, so I think we were at, the motion was tabled at the January school board meeting. At that point in time, the resolution that was presented to the board included a 25% rebate match from the state, 25%, so keeping the percentage the same, including the renters based on the income eligibility guidelines, and then removing that restriction that your rebate cannot exceed just the North Penn portion of the tax. So those were the three components that were the essence of the resolution that was tabled in January. So since we're in March now, we would like to bring this to resolution at the March action meeting if we could, because we would like to develop the new forms and get the forms out to all the interested parties and to start advertising it, do some articles for promotion. So we'd like to ask for your guidance and have discussion in terms of A, do we include renters? And B, what would the rebate percentage, or what should the rebate percentage be for next year? And then once those are decided and the board takes action, we can adjust our fiscal 19-20 budget accordingly.
Do you know from a dollar amount what was like the average rebate awarded?
$62.50.
$62.
So you have a number of different iterations here where it's the pleasure of the board.
I find it helpful with the number of claimants information as we go through this process. So thank you for that data and also the different choices that we have. Just, to my fellow board colleagues, I find it interesting with roughly twice the amount of homeowners as renters is interesting, to note. Considering right now we're just having 25% to the owners. I recall the last discussion was about including renters as well. My only other thought that I don't know which way I'm leaning right now, but I would imagine if the percentage is higher, is there a thought that maybe more people would be attracted to the program than just the current 25%? What if we went to 50% for homeowners? Thinking aloud.
And part of the discussion in the past was stepping this in a way that we would be able to hopefully cover the tax increase anticipated in the next budget, so that we could kind of help to ameliorate some of that sting from an increase in taxes. So that's why we're trying to step this in over time, so we could do that. So
I think we went out to several communities last year to promote the rebate, and a lot of people were eligible for the $62.50 amount, which doesn't sound like a lot, but people were really very appreciative that there was anything at all. So why I like the thought of tying out to the state program with including the renters, because I think that would be easier to, paperwork-wise. I think maybe if we just left it at the homeowners and up the amount, it would be more worth people's time to fill out the paperwork. So I think I'm kind of leaning more towards increasing the amount for homeowners as opposed to including the renters at this point now. So
I feel as though, Mr. Fusco, I feel as though the program is meant to benefit, as is listed at the beginning of the presentation, age 65 or older, widow or widower, age 50 or older, age 18 or more, and permanently disabled. I feel like if the goal of the program is to give those folks a bit of a respite, we have to go to where those folks are in our community. I feel there's a number of those folks that would be under the renters category. So as it stands at the moment, I'm leaning towards opening a 25% rebate up to renters as we did to homeowners. That's just where I stand at the moment.
I tend to agree with Tim to a certain degree. I think this year was a good kind of establishing a baseline and getting the word out. I think opening it up to renters next year to kind of see how that is what the reception is on that might be worth it, and then reevaluating the following year if the renters are taking advantage, if they're not, and addressing it at that time. I almost feel like we need that additional year of kind of baseline to make a more informed decision on this.
The one thing that I find attractive in just leaving it with owners is that the check that the school district issues to the homeowner can be directly tied to a payment that they've paid to the district. But certainly, we all know that renters indirectly pay school taxes. We know that because it's included in their rent. But we don't have a check to offset. There are no identifiable dollars that come into the school district through real estate tax money. And so when we're issuing the check, it's hard to, in my mind, it's hard to show the offset. And so I like being able to justify to the community that this person paid X amount of dollars into the district and we refunded Y amount of dollars. I think Mr. McBain does raise a good point. I think at a very high level, the money at the state level that's used to support this program is lottery money. And so generally lottery money always benefits older Pennsylvanians and the disabled. So I think whenever lottery proceeds are being used, you're always going to have narrow categories that are eligible to receive that money. I think this specific program was designed to reduce the tax burden. So I don't have really strong feelings, but my inclination is to leave it with owners for next year and to increase the percentage. That would be my thought. And if we have 116 in the budget, is that the number you indicated?
We have 116 in the budget, yes. And that was the same amount that we have in this year. We just put the same amount in for next year as a placeholder for now. So for example, what I have on the screen now, if it's the direction of the board to keep it with homeowners only, basically if we raise the percentage to 50%, doubling the current percentage, it would roughly be the same budget we have this year, $12,000 difference.
I think not having decided yet on which model here to put forth this year, I think it's important to express, though, that this is part of a longer-term plan that we as a board are trying to, we're trailblazing here. I absolutely would want to make sure that renters are included as part of this process, whether that's this year or not. Certainly going forward, that they are members of our community that we also need to continue to include in this process.
Anybody else have thoughts? I know we don't have a few of our members here. She got off after the first after the first item for work session / action.
I can let you know, I spoke with Mrs. Ramich on Friday. She was in to drop off some paperwork, and her indication, I asked her specifically about this, knowing that she would be unable to attend tonight's meeting, and her inclination was to include renters for the 1920 year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she expressed that feeling at the last meeting, and I think, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I think Mrs. G had the opposite thought, that was kind of leaning towards not including renters. I don't know whether that's changed, but that was.
I think Mrs. G had the, if I remember correctly, was for doubling the homeowners to 50%.
Yeah, she was on homeowners only.
My only concern was if we double it, one, I think that the renters should be included, and not raise the percentage of the rebate. Two reasons. One, just keep it as simple for your office as you can. I don't mean to add cost, but I wouldn't want to step into a program that we have to maintain and not be able to and have to take back. That if we take it up to 50% or whatever, as a homeowner that might be eligible for that, I think that's great. But then the next year, I was expecting it and it's not there is harder to take, even though
Yeah, and to that point, if we were to just do homeowners at 50%, and then the conversation as it continues to evolve, well, then next year we'll consider including renters, and we're not going to include them at a lesser amount, and so then we're also looking, do we want to expand upon the program again for homeowners? So I do think we have to keep in mind the scope of it and the layout of this program. I am inclined to want to include renters in this, and to give homeowners maybe a little more modest increase this year. I don't know that we need to jump to 50% just yet. I think we still have some time if we want to include the renters to consider just how quickly we're expanding the program.
Mr. Fusco, I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly. So was that, were you alluding to having two different rates?
No, I was alluding to not having to. What I was saying was, if we did homeowners only and 50% this year, then next year, that's going to be the minimum we're going to want to include renters at. And so we're kind of then looking at 237 plus or whatever it would be next year as our sort of minimum amount if we wanted to include them.
Mr. Strachey, how much of a added workload would it be for your office if we did increase homeowners to 30% in order to further incentivize further homeowner participation, and then also included renters at 25%?
My concern with having two different percentages is simply confusion on the part of the applicant. We see it now. I feel, and people that have reviewed the application now, feel it's pretty straightforward, but the most time-consuming part of the application process now is when the application isn't complete. So we try not to send it back and make people wait. So that means that we have to go and gather additional information to complete the application. However, in the case of having two separate rates, there'll have to be two separate applications. And will the individual use the correct application? In that particular case, if the wrong application is used, that one we'll have to send back because it's a completely different calculation. However, if they would be the exact same rate, we can have that as one application, and I think that would be a little less confusing. And that would reduce the amount of work internally then.
I appreciate the comments everyone's making. I do agree that, and I had the same thought, I think we need to have, as best as we're able, a multi-year strategy, because if you're not careful, if you set the bar at a certain level, like was mentioned, for one specific group and then expect to add a different group later, you're looking at a substantial increase from budget to budget. So I really think a multi-year strategy is a good idea.
Seems like we're still split though.
I would say specifically, like personally, my comfort level would be to do both at 30%. Would probably be, but specific to my comments.
It's about 140-some thousand, I think.
Yeah, so that would be what, an increase of about $25,000. Worst case scenario, best case scenario.
That sounds like a good compromise.
Checks all the boxes for the most part.
That's this option here.
That's that option.
So with a projected 50% participation at a rebate at 30%, including renters, the budget figure would be $142,438 for the 1920 fiscal year.
And right now we have 116.
Correct, 116, but Mrs. Perkowski, the reality of it is we'll probably end up spending maybe 35,000. So we're at 26,000 right now, and the applications are really dwindling. Majority of applications were in July, August, September. We're down to maybe 3-5 applications a week now, so we might end the year with 35,000 total reimbursement. So we would need to add some money to the budget for next year, not a whole lot, but even at that 50% projected participation level, I don't know, for the first year for renters, this expanded to renters, I'm not sure we'll get 50% that very first year. So that $142,000 budget figure, we might not need that full amount. Maybe we budget 130 or 135,000, something like that. That 50% I think is a very optimistic number.
Do we have any idea from the data that we've received from the state, sort of from the applications we've received, we know where in the district that we can kind of see that everybody in all different locations in the district is benefiting? Do we know where the renters that qualified for the state program exist? Are they in complexes? Are they in homes all over the district?
Yeah, that's a good question. Unfortunately, the data provided by the Department of Revenue doesn't get that specific in terms of location. They do break down the category, not only the income category, but the eligibility category. For example, is the individual over the age of 65? Is the individual disabled? Is the individual a widow or widower? They do break it down by that, and as well as the income. That's basically it. That's about all the data that we get. We don't get any more specific drill down data.
In our program, do we know how many applicants are simply over 65?
From this, not our applicants, but from the state level, we do.
Because right now, we include everybody that's included for the state program.
Correct.
So that's another thing to consider. Is our goal to, who are we intending to, where do we want to see these dollars go? Are we looking to, offset taxes that senior citizens pay, by widowers, by individuals that are disabled? Are we comfortable with including everybody? I mean, that's another, I don't want to make it more complicated, but you could break it down even further.
Do widows and widowers, they have to be over 65 though, correct?
No, age 50.
Oh, 50, okay.
Yes, age 50 or older for widow or widowers.
And then anybody that's disabled over 18.
Correct, yes. Meeting the income guidelines as well. So there's a two-step process, not just age or disability, but income guidelines apply to everyone as well.
Well, do more people, I guess we have to get a sense as to who's comfortable with this 142,000 figure. Yeah, if you want to.
All right, so I'll make a motion to increase the rebate program to 30% for homeowners and include renters in that rebate.
Second. Does that motion include the fix that we talked about for those folks that, I think it has to if we're including renters.
Correct. I would specify that to be clear because the resolution that we had drafted does eliminate the situation that we have this year that caps it at North Penn property taxes and includes all property taxes. So that should be probably called out because that'll be a change over the current year as well.
So the
I'll
motion.
include in the motion to also include folks who own their domicile but not their actual land, right?
So that the rebate, there's not a limitation on the rebate that
they can only
get a total rebate between the state and North Penn, capped at the total property tax bill paid to North Penn.
Correct.
Yes.
So
you got it.
to be clear, they can get more money than what their actual tax bill was.
They could get more money between the state program and the North Penn program than what their
North Penn bill
North
was.
Penn tax bill was because they also pay rent on top of that tax bill.
Right. Okay, I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
Correct.
I'm understanding it correctly. Okay.
And the draft that we had for the January meeting does remove that restriction that's in place now.
Okay.
Yeah, it is drafted to reflect what the motion was made.
So the applications that got bounced back, primarily from the folks that were in Chamonix Falls, that's primarily where these folks were located. This would take care of that for next year.
It should, yes.
All right, second. Any comments, questions? All in favor of just moving this forward to action? Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, moves forward.
Okay, thank you.
We're on to our second public comment of this evening. Anybody want to make public comment? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? All right, we're adjourned.